I'm a lecturer, yes, as introduced from the Department of Computer Science, and I'm an AI researcher. I have a special interest in AI for neuroscience. And I actually just joined the university last September, so before that, I'm an engineer developing large language models for search engine. I work in Baidu, which is just like Chinese versions of Google, and I developed large language models for Baidu search engine, which is still in use, serving like 500 million monthly active users. So during this year, I have worked with engineers, large language model developers, neuroscientists, clinicians. So through my working experiences, I am beginning to find there are a lot of interesting things in these three areas which are converging together. And I'm just maybe today I can share something more nerdy than the three previous representations we have. So we are going to talk from my view, how the insights and findings in large language models, neuroscience, and mental health are converging. Okay, and we are now going to begin with my area, AI and neuroscience. So what am I talking about? So, when you are listening to me talking, you can think, wow, that seems something really interesting. I'm going to have a look what this guy is thinking about. And you can also think that doesn't make sense. Better ended, we are going to have the coffee break. Both fine. But no matter what you are thinking about, no matter whether you are listening actively or inactively to me, your brain is working actively to support this. Oh my God, precise. Oh my God. Yeah, precise. The same too. So, and this kind of preciseness which is happening in your brain can be captured with other neuroimaging technologies or brain recording technologies. So the one we think there. So I know a lot of people work in the hospital. You know that is an MRI scanner, right? A machine that can basically take a photo shoot of your brain and let us know what is happening in your brain, at which position, what kind of things, what kind of physical activities are happening. So that is actually one screenshot of what your brain is, how your brain is activating. And except for fMRI, we also have other modalities like EEG, MEG, but they are all modalities or methodologies or tools that we can use to capture your brain's activity when you are doing some thinking, when your brain is working actively to support your daily life. And also, we heard a lot of large language models today. And one interesting fact is that when large language models, for example, is presenting that sentence, I love sense, yeah, I love, it also have kind of activation pattern. This I love sense sentence is input into the large language model, and the large language model is going to build some numerical and vector representation of this sentence. And that vector representation is a foundation of large language models to do so many wonderful things. And so the interesting thing we are going to talk about is, do we have some correlation between the brain activities we capture from human brain use these neuroimaging technologies and the activation patterns from the large language models or AI models which are totally numerical and vector-based? And how we are going to measure whether they have this kind of correlation? We are going to build a simple regression model, which is one model that we take as input the numerical representation, the vector, this one, from the large language model, to predict the human brain's activity or activation when they are reading this sentence. Yeah, like here. So we are trying to learn a function f, which helps us to predict from this vector to the brain activation or neural responses from human brain. And we are going to say that from this work I did about 4 or 5 years ago, when large language models are still at this BERT and GPT-1 era, we already see some very good results in this kind of prediction. So you can see those dots on this chart. So basically the x-axis are just some regions of interest within our brain, like just some regions on our cortical surfaces. And the dots there are the performance of the neural encoding performance, which is just like we use the embodings and vectors produced by large language models to predict the brain activities of human brain. And you can see those top dots are all from large language models, different structures. So we actually compared 10 models which in our area, like some are not large language model based, some are just large language model based. And our finding is that like 3 or 4 years ago, we already have these large language models which can predict human brain's activity when they are reading or listening to sentences at a very good performance, very good correlation. Okay, that's one thing, like which answers my question. Do we have maybe certain kind of correlation between the activations from the large language model and the activations from our human brain? That is like some proof from the encoding side, and we also have proof from the decoding side. So decoding might be more familiar with us because we all hear brain-computer interface these days, right? Brain-computer interface is basically we collect the human brain's neural signals and try to reconstruct some, expected output. Either I'm trying to reconstruct some actions or some speech or some visual imaginations. Actually, they are all one subdomain of brain decoding. And we are going to say that we can not only attribute that large language model's vector representation to predict how human brain are activating when they are listening or reading sentences. We can also use large language model to reconstruct from brain activations to the sentences or stories that we hear. So this work, yes. So this is some framework that we published recently last year, something that we built making use of large language models to reconstruct sentences from the fMRI recorded brain activities. So basically the idea is very similar to the neural encoding one, where we are making use of the mapping we built. We just mentioned that we have a mapping that can help us to predict the brain activities from the embeddings of large language models, right? We are making use of that mapper and like that mapping back to the embeddings we have and feed this embedding to the large language models. And this precise can help us reconstruct when the sentences or the stories human beings are listening to from their recorded brain activities. And that's some results that we get from this precise ground truth is the thing that we are reading, and the thing might get is our model is the results that we get. Okay, so what I'm mentioning here is something more nerdy, is that people tend to ask like, we see a lot of amazing AI applications in healthcare, but I'm trying to say that actually underlying this kind of amazing applications, there are actually more good, nice, fantastic alignment between AI system and human brain. And I'm going to even think actually me and my team are one of a lot of researchers who are trying to prove that for a system which is being able to learn statistically large enough data, they are going to converge on very similar or parallel or shared representation. You can basically, for example, understand our human brain as a system which experiences like thousands of years of evolution and get access to a lot of huge data. And the one reason that large language model is showing this advantage is that large language model with a very short period of time also have the chance of ability to learn a very large amount of data. So me and my group are actually trying to prove that for these two systems, human brain and large language models, or other AI system, other foundational AI models, which is able to process large enough data, they are going to converge on a same shared representation space. We call like a plateau representation space. And I think that is a very fascinating thing. So that fascinating thing do have some very good application. Because like if we can have this kind of system, which for example, on behavior, we know large language models these days can produce some language production behavior like speak like humans do, right? It is kind of behavioral element between the large language models and the human brain. And we also show that there are potential that the neural activations, like the underlying thing, within the large language models and the human brain are also sharing. That means from both the neural and behavioral dimensions, these two systems are converging. Large language model has some ability to simulate a health patient. Then it also means that it has the potential to simulate some health people. Then it will have the potential to simulate some patients. And that's this thing I'm going to share with Ariel. That's not our work because like Shima, me, and my collaborators, we do things too slow, so they already do this first. But it's very close to what we are trying to do. We know that large language models have in neuroscience and in behavioral means some kind of ability to align with human beings. Then it means that we can also ablate large language models or destroy large language models to simulate some patients, which is what these people do. They are trying to build large language model as a simulator of people with mental issues, and they are going to build large language models with their cognitive models of the patients and like the large language model to behave like a patient. And this simulator can be used to train some mental therapists, like psychology therapists, because to be able to qualify as a good enough therapist, you need enough training, and they can use this kind of technology for training. That is, I introduced their work because it is very similar to me and my collaborators do in neuroscience. We are doing something similar to build simulation of patients with neurodegenerative diseases. But our work is still at its relatively early stage, so I show theirs, which is more easier for us to understand these things. Yeah, basically that is the kind of emotional states or mental psychology issue states that they can simulate and the performance they have. So they already have a system that can simulate the patients where they have at a very good resolution. And they are, I guess, on their way of putting this system into real usage. This is a study from CMU. And so bring all these three things together, like AI, neuroscience, mental health, and cognitive health. I'm thinking from my point of view, we are actually very close to the point where people think that is really, fiction or only appears in some sci-fi or movies, that we are building some simulation of human beings from a lot of dimensions that human beings do, like in the behavioral means, like the neural means, and for both healthy human beings or unhealthy human beings. So I'm thinking that when we are bridging all these three things together, we are actually building a very nice simulation which actually can be used in a lot of health simulations. For example, if we have this simulation, we can use this simulation to simulate the progress of a patient with certain conditions, for example, the development of certain neurodegenerative diseases. And also we can prove or predict the results or the effects of some therapeutic piece use this kind of simulation. Actually, the simulation thing has been talked and researched for several years. People have different names for that. In silico simulation, digital twins, I guess a lot of people have heard about that. But what I mean is that with the development of the language models, and especially foundational AI model, we are actually more and more close to what we mean, a really simulation of human beings. And I just welcome everyone to explore this area. Thank you.
In the data that you've got, did you use more than the words, or were the language models based just on what was said, or was there something about the way something was said? So I'll give you an example. Your stimuli, I love science. Yeah. If I put the stress when I'm speaking on one of those words and not the other, it completely changes the meaning, right? So one question is about whether you are understanding affect, which is transmitted through the way that we speak, not just the words that we use. And secondly, I think there's a philosophical question that I have around how we understand language. Because if we start with an assumption that the language system is about encoding and decoding words, then we're negating philosophy. We're negating an understanding of how people use language, which is not simply or merely to reproduce the information in my mind in someone else's mind. That there's a whole philosophical understanding of how language is used for intersubjectivity, and I would argue that that is absolutely core to good healthcare, is to understand and work with an intersubjective philosophy of language.
Yes.
So I'm sorry I've spoken quite a lot there, but I feel that what I've asked is sort of a skepticism perhaps that I have around the role of AI and language models, which might be really drawing us away from some of the depth of thinking that is available to us from philosophy and linguistic science.
Yes, yes, that makes totally sense. Actually, that's one point I love to mention. It is also one question that I got when I finish this kind of speech, this kind of talk. It is the thing that I want to clarify is no matter large language model or a lot of artificial neural networks, their underlying architecture are totally different from the biological neural networks within human brain. So from my talk, I'm now trying to argue that this large language model, or the foundational AI models we are developing, is replicating human beings in a total way. Most of the results I'm shared are actually driven by the representational element, which is like we are not totally cloning the language mechanism from human brain. We are just observing and making use of the representational element between these two systems. And we found, like, as we observe in a lot of applications today, which is already very enough for a lot of downstream applications. And to study, the philosophy of human languages, which is highly complex, using like one computational proxy, like large language model, is apparently not enough. We still need a lot of other theories and tools which, from different areas, from different domains to put together to give us like a total picture of how human is using and learning language. Yeah, that's my point.